This is Dateline News and Conversation. My guest tonight, returning from Armenia, is Natalya Saghiyan. She's a politician and an expert in soft power. Tonight, we're going to talk about what I think is a big story. It's the end of a 30-year dispute between Armenia and Azerbaijan over the territory known as Nagorno Karabakh. Natalya, welcome to the show.
Thank you for inviting me again.
Well, I'm happy to have you. First of all, it was announced on Thursday, May 25th, that your Prime Minister, Nikol Pashinyan, and the Azerbaijani President Ilhman met in Moscow, hosted by President Putin, no less, and they came to an agreement to end this 30-year standoff and hopefully armed conflict at the border. My first question for you, Natalya, because I don't know the difference. The Azerbaijani president met with your prime minister. Do you not have a president, or what is the relationship between prime minister and president in Armenia?
Okay, this is the situation. In 2015, we had a referendum about change of political system in Armenia. Before it was a presidential republic, and now it's a parliamentary republic. So the actual head of state is prime minister. We do have a president, but president is much more limited in his rights and obligations. So in top level talks and in this high summit negotiations, Armenia is usually represented by the prime minister, because the parliamentary elections are the major elections in Armenia. So the people elect members of the parliament. Members of the parliament elect the prime minister, and the prime minister appoints the president, which is to be approved by the parliament. This is the situation.
Okay, well, thank you for clarifying that for me, and I'm sure for many others who aren't familiar with the situation. As I mentioned in the introduction, the two have agreed to end this territorial dispute. Give us a very brief historical background. We covered that a week or so ago when we did the other show with you, but just to put this in context, the historical background, what is it? Where did this dispute come from?
This dispute came from the beginning of the 20th century, when predominantly Armenian populated Nagorno Karabakh and Nakhichevan, which also was predominantly populated by Armenians until a few years after it was given to Azerbaijan by Bolsheviks. So these two Armenian regions were given to Azerbaijan by Bolsheviks, and ever since then, the dispute was there, because Armenians didn't want to live under Azerbaijani rule. What they managed to do is they managed to get rid of all Armenians in Nakhichevan, and today there are not one single Armenian living there. But in Artsakh, in Nagorno-Karabakh, we Armenians, we call it Artsakh. So if I do this, if I call this name, which is not probably known to some people, know that Artsakh is same, Nagorno-Karabakh. Well, there is a little territorial difference, but when we say Artsakh, we understand Nagorno-Karabakh. And in the end of the Soviet Union, when it was already obvious that it has become weak and that it will fall apart eventually, sometime around 1988, the Karabakh movement started in Armenia. which was a movement for liberation of Karabakh. In parallel with this, with activity of, political activists which were dissidents in Soviet Union, in fact. In Azerbaijan, there were many acts of oppression by Azerbaijani officials, which was organized. All these mass murders that were organized in Khojaly, in Baku, in Kirovabad, in many other places where Armenians lived in communities. And we were getting all this terrible news how were people massacred in Baku, and this is the end of the 20th century. From 1988 to 1991, when the Soviet Union finally fell apart. And in fact, Nagorno-Karabakh was the first republic. It had a status of autonomous republic within Soviet Azerbaijan. So it was the first to have a referendum to claim its independence from the Soviet Union. And as I mentioned in our last interview, in fact, Nagorno-Karabakh declared its independence from the Soviet Union even before Azerbaijan did. So in fact, Nagorno-Karabakh has never been a part of this Azerbaijan that we're seeing today. The Republic of Azerbaijan that was founded or declared its independence later than Nagorno-Karabakh did. And if Nagorno-Karabakh did it through a referendum, the Republic of Azerbaijan did it simply by the order of its Supreme Council. This was the head of the Soviet Republic, yes? So there are also legislative issues. And ever since then, there was a war, let me remind you, from 1992 to 1994, the war for liberation of Artsakh, when people of Artsakh took weapons and struggled for their independence with help of the Republic of Armenia. In fact, the military actions in Nagorno-Karabakh started when the Soviet Union was not officially dissolved yet. And Soviet army was fighting against the people of Artsakh. But then in the course of this war, the Soviet Union fell apart. And in 1994, a ceasefire was signed with the mediation of Russian Federation. So Armenian side forced Azerbaijani side to sign the ceasefire. And we were recognized as winners of this war, because we not only liberated the territory of Republic of Artsakh, Republic of Nagorno-Karabakh, but we also took over 7 regions around it, but we never said that we want this land. We said this is a safety zone around the Republic of Artsakh, Nagorno-Karabakh, which we are going to return to Azerbaijan in exchange for recognition of the status of Nagorno-Karabakh. And all these years, we had sometimes active, sometimes not very active negotiations, which were every now and then stopped by Azeri side, because even the international community, the OSCE Minsk group, which was a mediator in this process, recognized the destructive position of Azerbaijan in this, because Armenian side was always constructive. We were always open for negotiations, but we had very clear red lines that the independence of the Republic of Artsakh is not a subject of any negotiation, because people of Artsakh declared their independence. And the right of self-determination cannot be undermined compared to the territorial integrity of Azerbaijan, because the Republic of Artsakh we have now has never been a part of independent Azerbaijan, which we have now. But all these were the 28 years of successful negotiations, and even there is a documented, there is a video how Ilham Aliyev, president of Azerbaijan, he's having a speech in front of his government saying that international community is putting me under pressure, demanding me to recognize independence of Nagorno-Karabakh because these negotiations have taken too long. And these people have expressed their desire to be independent. And this speech he made in autumn of 2017. And in 2018, West-sponsored color revolution happened in Armenia, led by a person who is the Prime Minister of Armenia today, Nikol Pashinyan, who never even tried to hide his position on Artsakh. He always thought that Nagorno-Karabakh is a burden for Armenia, and if we withdraw from these negotiations and just forget about 120,000 Armenians living there, we will live happily ever after, which is of course not going to happen, because now when Azerbaijan is closely backed up by Turkey, which never happened before, because Russia was always in the middle trying to keep Azerbaijan and Turkey apart and not letting them to integrate so much as they are now. They are now even talking about common army, one army for two states. You see, after the second, or should I say the third Artsakh war, which happened in 2020, 44-day war we call it, when Azerbaijan took 75% of the territory of independent Nagorno-Karabakh, and they now even refuse to call it Nagorno-Karabakh. They say this thing doesn't exist. It's just Karabakh, a region of Azerbaijan, and all the people who live there, they can either take Azerbaijani passport or go to Armenia. So get out of my land. This is my land. If you're not happy here, you're free to go to Armenia. Question closed. Unfortunately, the person who took power in result of a regime change through a color revolution in Armenia, this person is, it's been 5 years now that he's been pushing forward Turkish Azeri agenda on recognizing Nagorno-Karabakh as a territory of Azerbaijan. And today we hear that he actually did it already, because he's, I'm sure that he's a totally biased person who is not pro-Armenian. He's not pro-Russian, he's not pro-Western. He is pro-Turkish and pro-Azeri. Unfortunately, he is acting under the influence of everybody who can put him under pressure. He was brought to power, I think, as a result of a consensus outside Armenia that the issue of Artsakh has to be resolved. But since Azerbaijan has oil and gas and is backed up by Turkey, this issue was resolved by very, very strong participation of the so-called collective West, represented sometimes by Brussels, sometimes by Washington, in favor of Azerbaijan. An Armenian prime minister is now manipulating, because he's a great populist, he is now manipulating terms saying that we have to give up Artsakh in order to save Armenia. And I think that Nikol Pashinyan and Ilham Aliyev are playing together in this. Because whenever there is any sign of disagreement or whatsoever public reaction against Pashinyan's position, Aliyev starts shooting on the border. Immediately Pashinyan makes a live speech or writes a post on his webpage or whatever, saying that, you see, as soon as you start opposing that we have to surrender Artsakh, we have more and more soldiers dying on our border. So let's surrender Artsakh and live in peace. But the most outrageous thing about it is that Nikol Pashinyan is being invited to speak in front of the Assembly General of the United Nations. And instead of speaking prisoners of war that are being kept until now in Baku after the 44-day war, even though the document signed by Armenia, Russia, and Azerbaijan after the end of 44-day war clearly states that all persons imprisoned during the war or after the war have to be returned by both sides. So Armenia returned everybody we had captured during the war, and Azerbaijan is still holding prisoners of war in Baku. And we have many, many evidences delivered to us by the Red Cross that these people are being subjected to torture and inhuman attitude. And all this is being filmed and very often sent to the families of these soldiers. This is the real face of Azerbaijan. And Nikol Pashinyan, instead of speaking about prisoners of war that are being kept by Azerbaijan, instead of speaking about Azerbaijan aggression that happened even after the 44-day war in September of 2022, when Azerbaijan attacked the southeast regions of Armenia, took over several villages, and people had to run away like from Azeri bullets. And up till now, the registered over 150 square kilometers of territory of Armenia, sovereign territory of Armenia, are being occupied by Azerbaijan, and they are showing no signs of retreating or whatsoever. They're saying, you know, until Armenia doesn't recognize Artsakh as a part of Azerbaijan, we're not moving an inch away from here. So this is an obvious use of force and threat of use of force. So this is the situation. One last thing, that Nikol Pashinyan, Prime Minister of Armenia, is obviously not playing on the Armenian side.
Wow. Yeah, wow. Boy, that's really interesting. That's not coming out. I mean, the article that I read in RT this week made it sound like your prime minister was willing to cede territory to Azerbaijan. And everything was worked out except some clause about safe passage, a corridor of safe passage, and a recognition that Armenians occupy that territory. Can you clarify that? I mean, from what you're telling me and what I've read, it doesn't sound like there's much of an agreement. And it certainly doesn't sound like the Armenian people are going to go for this.
Recent sociological polls show that majority of the population of Armenia, over 85%, totally disagree with surrendering Nagorno-Karabakh to Azerbaijan. They totally disapprove. Over 57% of population totally disapprove position of Nikol Pashinyan. But the thing is that after, you see, in 2018, during this color revolution, tens of thousands of people were on the street. They were so overwhelmed with the feeling of new change, a wind of change is coming to Armenia, and we're going to have a better life after this. So all these people were lied to, were manipulated, because they were presented a picture of a bright future when our safety and safety of Artsakh will remain as it is, but we will have no corruption in Armenia. But it never works like this. When you have a regime change, especially in a country located in a place like Armenia is, you can be 100% sure that your enemies are going to use the momentum and try to, take whatever they can take. Now, what happens with negotiations? First of all, people of Armenia have no clear picture of what is this person negotiating, because we only get bits of information from Armenian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. We get totally contradicting bits of information from official Baku, from Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Azerbaijan. We get very conservative information from Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Russia, which is understandable, because Russia is trying to have this equally distanced position between Azerbaijan and Armenia, because considering the geopolitical situation with Ukraine and general anti-Russian campaign unleashed by the West during the last, I don't know, after 2014 and after the Crimea was declared independent from Ukraine, we can understand why this is happening, particularly today when Russian peacekeepers are in Artsakh, holding Azeris back from organizing another mass murder of Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh. We understand that Russia has to be really equally distant in this question, yes, and be unbiased. Because the moment Russia shows whatsoever biased attitude, 5 minutes later, Turkey will say, your peacekeepers are biased, so take them out, I'm taking mine in. Because if you can be biased, then I can be biased too. And if you are on Armenian side, then I will be on Azeri side. And this is a dangerous situation. Obviously, Nikol Pashinyan recognized the territorial integrity of Azerbaijan. He said it himself in the parliament of Armenia as 86,600 square kilometers, which includes Nagorno-Karabakh. So he surrendered 120,000 Armenians living there to Azerbaijan. And we can be sure that 5 years later, no Armenian is left there. Apart from that, he says that these square kilometers that he mentions also include enclaves, which are now in the territory of Armenia, Tigran-Ashen, which is one of the largest enclaves. And the thing is that Tigran-Ashen is a village through which a main road from Yerevan is going to Vayot Zor and further to the border with Iran is going. So if this enclave is surrendered, obviously Azeris will put checkpoints on both ends, and there will be no possibility for Armenians or for cargo or for whatever going to Iran freely. Especially that Nikol Pashinyan already surrendered the 21 kilometers of the road from Kapan to Vorotan. This is another piece of road in the south of Armenia, which is on the road to Iran, which is very important for Armenia, because this is another road of life. Now let's return to the corridor that joins Armenia with Nagorno-Karabakh, the so-called Lachin corridor. The document of 9th of November, signed with 3 parties, Russian Federation, Armenia, and Azerbaijan, says clearly that this corridor has to be free, and the people and cargo are supposed to move back and forth unrestricted, which means that no checkpoint can be set up there. This document also says that the alternative road along Lachin corridor has to be built at some point in future, and in 2023, plans for this road only had to be negotiated. But Pashinyan surrendered the existing road of Lachin corridor without having built the Armenian part of the alternative road much earlier, as he said, because he had a verbal agreement with President Aliyev, which Armenian people knew nothing about. And suddenly we learned from the media one morning that the old Lachin road is closed and the new Lachin road is also closed because Armenian part of the road is not ready, and Azerbaijan has set up a checkpoint there. But Azerbaijan has a legitimate position on this, because President Aliyev says, if Armenia recognizes territorial integrity of Azerbaijan, including Nagorno-Karabakh, then what corridor are we talking about? Then this is where the interstate border is going to pass. So I'm putting there a checkpoint, which is, from their point of view, it's a legitimate position. But because in Armenia we have such a regime today, which is not able to oppose to any manifestation of power or threat of use of force by Azerbaijan. This is why we are in this situation. And today we are talking, as I said before, about surrendering of several enclaves and 8 villages in Tavush region, which is on south-north of Armenia. Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Yeah, it froze for a second.
So, yes, so the people in 8 villages in Tavush region, which is in the north of Armenia, northeast of Armenia, are now living already under the threat of Azeri militaries because they have occupied all the best heights in the region. So Armenian villages are in the, you know, in the territory of a Hendrich, and even a simple machine gun, if shot, can reach a school building or kindergarten building of Armenian villages. And it is happening almost every day, just, you know, to keep people, not to let them relax, just from Azeri side to keep them, you know, alert and remember that, you know, we're here, don't relax too much, and we're taking over as much as we want, because Azeris are just marching on foot on the sovereign territory of Armenia and taking the most beneficiary heights in the concrete territory. For example, as happened in Sunik region, in the village of Ter, there are like several hills which are a very convenient position for Azeris, and they took it over without any sort of activity from Armenian side, because as we learned afterwards from the media again, Armenian soldiers received a very strict order not to fight back and simply to roll back. This means that there is an agreement between official Yerevan and official Baku just to surrender everything.
Wow. So it doesn't sound like very much is being settled. It sounds to me, it sounds to me like this situation is only going to get worse. And if the majority of the Armenian people oppose this, how is it that Mr. Pashinyan can stay in power? Can't your parliament remove him?
No, because he has a constitutional majority in the parliament, 71 seat out of 112. So obviously there is an opposition represented by 2 political alliances, but they are a minority. And there is another trick about this too. In Armenia, we had an external parliamentary elections in 2021. And there was another very big manipulation, because the party of Nikol Pashinyan received 680,000 votes. But this is only about 27% of all citizens having right to vote. A vast majority of Armenians just didn't show up, didn't take part in the elections. This is why the opposition got so little votes, because Pashinyan, during his campaign before elections, you know, he's a great manipulator and a populist, just like Zelensky and Saakashvili before him. And the scenarios of their speeches, of everything they say, are just so copy-paste that we can see that these speeches and the general scenarios of these color revolutions and everything that happens after that are written in the same office. And Nikol Pashinyan has all PR managers he wants from the West. So he manipulated the public opinion, and he got re-elected even after the 44-day war, when over 5,000 Armenian soldiers were killed by Azeris, because Armenian side was not fighting back, because there was an command from Yerevan in very many places, and we're having this evidence now, not to fight back, but to surrender Hadrut, Shushi, these are Armenian cities of Nagorno-Karabakh, which are now occupied temporarily, hopefully, by Azerbaijan. So there was a prior agreement to surrender Artsakh through war, because Nikol Pashinyan, in fact, he committed it himself. He said, I could not surrender Artsakh without a war because I would be called a traitor. These are his words in the parliament. So he actually arranged the war together with Aliyev to surrender Artsakh and to tell Armenian people, let's give up Artsakh and live happily. There is an official information by the ODKB, the Collective Security Treaty Organization, that in September of 2020, before the war, this organization informed the Armenian Security Council that according to their information, Azerbaijan is preparing for a war to take over Artsakh, and Armenian Security Council didn't consider it a serious threat. This organization, the Common Security Treaty Organization, even offered the Armenian side to organize a brief military, how do you call it? Military what? Exercises in September in Armenia. I'm sure that it was offered to Armenia to at least postpone the war. But the Armenian Security Council said that we do not consider it reasonable at the moment. Right before the war started on the 27th of September. Do you understand what kind of betrayal is happening in Armenia, that even the Common Security Treaty Organization is informing us, and we're saying, no, we don't think this is a serious threat. And when we're being offered to organize military exercises on the territory of Armenia to at least postpone the attack of Azerbaijan, we refuse. We say, no, we don't think that, Azerbaijan, we are trying to build peace with Azerbaijan. Why would they attack? And there we have a war on the 27th of September. I have to mention one more thing, that the Secretary of the Security Council of Armenia is a person who has served as an official in Transparency International for many years, always took anti-Russian positions, participated in all sorts of anti-Russian activities on streets of Yerevan, in Belarus, in Ukraine, in Tbilisi. We can see pictures, photos are everywhere. Them holding posters with anti-Russian slogans everywhere in post-Soviet Union states. Wherever you saw anti-Russian activity in the streets, these people were there. And today, this person is the Secretary of Security Council of Armenia. And he is still holding same anti-Russian position. He keeps meeting with US officials from the Pentagon, UK officials from MI6. They're not even hiding that they're coming to Armenia. And same people are meeting officials in Baku, in Georgia, and in Yerevan.
Well, I was going to ask you, but I think you made it really clear. It's the United States. And when I hear the term collective West, the United States is the head of the snake. And even Nancy Pelosi, I know, was in your country, in Yerevan last September. And it's all about this soft power that you and I spoke about in our last interview. You also mentioned in Georgia, the same thing in Ukraine. It's going on in Moldova. The United States and Serbia right now. The United States is pushing
it's a
for
disaster
another
in
war.
Serbia.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow. Well, Natalya, how do you think all of this is going to end?
It's a very whatever prediction I may make, it will be a speculation, because it is so complicated. You see, the I keep calling it pro-Western media in Armenia is being pumped with money in order to push forward the anti-Russian agenda in Armenia. When Armenian people are traditionally looking towards Russia for salvation, which has happened many times. In fact, today, the 28th of September, is the day of national pride in Armenia. This is the day of the first republic, of establishment of the first republic in Armenia, which was possible only after the Sardarapat battle, when Armenians, together with Russian soldiers, fought against Turks and liberated what's been left from Armenia, and the first Armenian Republic was established. Today we're celebrating the day of the first republic in Armenia, and traditionally it happened with great help of Russia and great help of Russian soldiers. But because of this propaganda that's being fired over and over again, lit up by the Western financed media, Armenian people are now totally confused. Of course, they are in a great apathy after this 44-day war, because we are used to live in a secure and safe country with its internal problems, social problems, corruption, and all the negative things that I think exist anywhere. It only differs because of the scale. Of course, we did have internal problems too, but we didn't solve any of these internal problems. We lost Artsakh, we lost a huge piece of Armenia, and we're now under threat of losing our statehood at all. And Armenian people are confused and apathic because they hear contradictory information from state media, which is also sponsored by the West, promising them things that are not realistic and are never going to happen. And they see very balanced and some call it cold position of Russia, which is better than promises that are not realistic. And this is why people of Armenia are not storming, for example, the building of the parliament, because they are confused. And they're confused by elections of the 2021, which Azerbaijan already uses as the legitimization of position of Pashinyan, saying Armenian people supported Pashinyan in 21, even after the war, which means that they support position of Pashinyan regarding Artsakh and regarding any other land that Pashinyan is going to surrender. And they're pushing forward Zangezur corridor, which is, as Azeris and Turks see it, an ex-territorial corridor. So a corridor through the territory of Armenia from Azerbaijan to Nakhichevan, which will not be controlled by Armenia. And Pashinyan is very close to recognizing that too. Thanks God, President Putin said it's not going to happen during the meeting that they had recently on the 25th. President Putin clearly made Aliyev understand that no ex-territorial corridor is going to happen. Azerbaijan has to recognize the territorial integrity of Armenia within this funny number, 29,800 square kilometers, which we do not have now, because now Azerbaijan occupies at least 150 square kilometers of Armenian land, and they're not. And here, what Pashinyan is saying, he says, let's move our armies back by a mirror principle. So Azeris are already on our land. If we fall back 5 kilometers inside our territory and Azeris fall back 5 kilometers, they will still be on our land. So first they have to move back from where they were after the 44-day war, and only after that we can speak about a mirror falling back. But you see, the thing is that Nikol Pashinyan is under a very big influence of officials from Brussels and from Washington. And the collective West, as I call it, represented by Washington mostly, is pushing forward this peace treaty between Armenia and Azerbaijan, not because they want peace in this region, because they want Russia out of this region. So they do not care about Armenians. All they want is to push Russia out of this region. Look what happened today between Afghanistan and Iran. Suddenly, Taliban decided that they want to attack Irani border. And we all know what Taliban is, even though our Americans withdrew from Afghanistan. But they still, how did it all happen if we look back? They just left Afghanistan under Taliban because they knew that leaders of Taliban are also cooperating with Washington. Even though they claim that they are fighting against the US and, but all this is, I'm sorry, but all this is just idle talk. We all know that geopolitics is not working like this. So the so-called collective West wants Russia out of this region, and they want Armenia and Azerbaijan together to start campaigning against Iran. This is their final goal. And today, Armenia's only road of life, apart from the road that we have through Georgia, is through Iran. And because we are members of the Commonwealth of Independent States, as a matter of fact, the border between Armenia is Iran, and Iran is also a border of the CIS with Iran, meaning border of Russia with Iran. And if they cut it off, Russia will lose a serious part of its communications with Iran. The only country that they will be able to communicate with Iran with will be Azerbaijan and a little part of Caspian Sea. So this is where this collective West is taking us. Same like they did with Zelensky, they pushed him against Russia, and this is what we're seeing. They're now having a war till the last Ukrainian alive. Same they did in Georgia, and see what happened. Georgia left lost two large pieces of its territory. But Armenia is too small to lose territories. And why should we lose territories? Because Mr. Pashinyan is under the way, is a working, pushing forward agenda promoted by the West, but in reality, this is a Turkish-Azeri agenda. Because today there are elections, presidential elections in Turkey. We're going to see how it ends up. But Erdogan, the president in power today, he has this vision that he has to recreate the great Turan, and Armenia is on his way. So he wants to cut a piece of Armenia, which we call Sunik. This is the southern part of Armenia, bordering with Iran, Azerbaijan, and Turkey. So if they want to cut off Sunik, they will not stop after having Artsakh swollen by Azerbaijan. They will cut off Sunik to have one territory, Turkey and Azerbaijan, because they already signed the sadly known Shushi Treaty, where it clearly says 2 countries, 1 nation between Turkey and Azerbaijan. Now imagine the level of integration. And if there is no layer, which is Armenia now, between these 2 countries, this whole region is going to be one bloodshed, because they will not tolerate any other nation here. As the history shows, we're not making this up. Armenians, just like Greeks, Assyrians, Kurds, Yazidis, and many other peoples living in the territory of Ottoman Empire, we faced this attitude many, many times in the course of our common history with Turks. Azeris were not on the map at that time, because Azerbaijan appeared on the map in 1918. Before that, there was no such thing as Azerbaijan. As Vladimir Putin said, Ukraine of Vladimir Ilyich Lenin, because Ukraine was also created by Lenin. Azerbaijan was created by Stalin. So we can say Azerbaijan of Iosif Vissarionovich Stalin. There was no such country on the map before 1918. So this is why Armenian people are in such an apathy. And this is why we're, there are political processes inside Armenia going on, but there is also a very big non-democratic, because, the ace in the base of Pashinyan's cards was democracy. He came to power claiming that Armenia will be the most democratic democracy in the region. But what we see now, last year we had 3 months of protests in the streets, and Pashinyan used special forces of the police against protesters on the street. And all this happened 80 meters away from the embassy of the EU, when they used weapons and light grenades, light and sound grenades. There is a particular kind of grenade which eliminate very, very bright light and very loud noise, which can seriously damage health of people. But the police forces used it against protesters, like some 80 meters away from EU embassy, and no reaction from Madame Ambassador Victorine. No reaction on this whatsoever. We have never saw anything from them. We didn't hear anything from Brussels. We didn't hear anything from Washington. I myself spent weeks sleeping in the tent on the street, protesting against Pashinyan's agenda on surrendering everything he can surrender. This is no peace negotiations. This is threat of use of force by Azerbaijan and manipulation of Pashinyan in order to keep people calm, because people are disoriented, so it's very easy for him to manipulate. And he says that any opposition in Armenia that opposes this peace treaty are revanchists who are only warmongers, and they want to start a new war. And at the same time, in the next sentence, he says, if we sign this peace treaty with Azerbaijan, there is a 50-50 probability of a new war. Just listen to it. But if we do not sign the peace treaty, there is a 100% probability of war. So he's not really offering us any alternative. But people are disoriented and lied to so many times after this color revolution that they do not believe to anyone. They do not believe in opposition, because they say, okay, but you do not offer anything either. But we cannot offer anything because we do not know what exactly he negotiated. We only get bits of information, so we cannot put this puzzle together to understand where is he taking us. We can only see that today Armenian history textbooks for schools are being edited in a way to erase the word genocide from it. Because Turkish side says, we don't really like it. You always push forward this genocide agenda. And we don't like it because we do not recognize any genocide. What are you talking about? And when Foreign Minister of Turkey says Armenian diaspora and Armenians of Artsakh are two factors which do not let Armenia and Azerbaijan to sign peace treaty. See what they're trying to do. They are trying to make Armenians and diaspora Armenians to be against each other. And this is also a process, use of soft power, which has been manipulated in many places. They did the same thing with Georgia, because there is also a big Georgian diaspora outside Georgia. They did same with Ukraine. But what is happening in Serbia now is very much similar to what is happening in all these places where the collective West is using ethnic conflicts as a possibility to, if possible, to open the second front against Russia, if not possible, to create a lot of headache for Russia. Because Serbia is probably the only European country which is without any doubt supporting Russia. And there's this story of Kosovo being separated from Serbia is a tragedy. And there was no referendum in Kosovo, unlike Crimea, unlike Donetsk and Lugansk regions, unlike Nagorno-Karabakh. The people of all these regions I mentioned expressed their will through a referendum, but still they are deprived by the collective West of their right to claim their independence, whereas Kosovo, where there was no referendum, is pushed forward as an agenda from the West to be recognized as an independent state. And see what's happening there now. People are dying again just because they needed to create another burning spot in the heart of Europe to create more headache for Russia in Russia-Ukraine conflict.